You're listening to another episode of the Hashtag Kangaroos podcast. Here is your host, Dean Masich.
Welcome back to the Kangaroos Hashtag podcast. I've already stuffed up the intro. That's how well I'm going tonight. I'm Dean Vasic. Big episode this week. I'm joined by fellow North Melbourne voice and host of the North Pod Show, although there's going to be a few questions about that. Jason, great to have you back on, or great to have you on. It's great to link up with someone who lives and breathes the Roos. So there's plenty to get through tonight. Not a bad time to come on, Jason, after the weekend we just had against the Suns as well. Coming from 43 points down to pull off a miraculous comeback win against all odds. But before we get into that, what's happened to the North Pod Show? The fans want to know, mate, what's going on?
Thank you for having me on, Dean. It's good to be talking to a microphone again. We'll see if I've still got the skill. I really hoped going into this season that I'd be able to keep going from a time perspective. But as you know, Dean, with a young family, that it can be a bit of a juggling act. So I've made the decision, at least for this year, to put it on hold and I guess focus more on a bit of family life balance, and then hopefully, God willing, we'll see what happens in the future. I certainly haven't put a complete close on it, but it was just taking up just too much of my time, unfortunately, for something that is, at the end of the day, it's a hobby. It's something that I enjoy doing, but it doesn't bring me income. It doesn't bring in the dough for the family. So I just had to prioritise a few things, unfortunately. So still enjoying watching plenty of North Melbourne, but unfortunately just don't quite have the time at the moment in this phase of life to commit to a podcast.
No, and that's fair enough. We spoke a little bit about this off air as well, but I know you did a lot of your podcast by yourself, and it wasn't so much doing the show, which takes generally 45 minutes to an hour. That's how long they'll go, and sometimes a bit over. But it was more the preparation, wasn't it? Like there's 2 or 3 hours there where you sort of almost looking at stats, you're watching replays, and then you're coming up with the format for the show. So that's what was killing the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It's one of those things that, obviously it can take as long as you let it, but I also don't want to, I wasn't really going to be happy with creating a podcast that I didn't like the standard of. And so if I wanted to make something that I, was proud of and I thought was worth listening to, you're right, it was taking me, obviously the time to watch the game, which I do anyway, but then, several hours preparation, and then I'd record, and then it would take me some time to edit that a little bit. So I was happy with the quality, and then it's, posting on socials, all that stuff that you don't necessarily have to do, but I think makes it a better product, I suppose. So, if any of your listeners have ever tried their hand at any kind of podcasting, it's one of those things that, maybe from the outside, people might think it doesn't take a lot of time or preparation, but it's something that you've got to invest a fair bit of time into to make it worth listening to. So, yeah, unfortunately, the time wasn't there, but I've still found mostly enough time to watch some footy, and it's there's been some good footy to watch this year at times.
Oh, definitely. We'll certainly get into that very soon. Now, at Clarko's Medicinal Cannabis has come into the chat. I think it might be the one that comes in a fair bit. Last week it was George Wardlaw's pet possum or something like that. North Talk is back. Good to see you. So there you go. You got a fan there, Jason, so that's good to hear. Now, obviously, big news day today with the passing of Neil Daniher. Just an unbelievable fight. To go as long as he did with such a cruel disease and the impact he's left behind is something that goes way beyond football. And also to be surrounded by loved ones as well, right at the end. There's something really powerful in that. Not everyone gets to leave the world on their own terms, and with a legacy like he has, I mean, Jason, there's not much more we can say, really, is there?
No, I think it's kind of remarkable to think about the legacy that he's left, obviously, in terms of just his contribution to AFL football, and then I think probably far more impactfully his contribution to MNG and the awareness and money that he's brought to that. And I think, it's sometimes these things you can look for signs. I think he lived a lot longer than, I think he should have based on his diagnosis. He had so much time to do what he did, spread awareness, create this wonderful Freeze MND game that we have each year. And so whilst unfortunately his life was, cut short, I think it's remarkable that he's been able to do so much with it and so much with that time that he had, particularly in the back half of his life. It's, obviously it's a sad day, but by the same token, I think it's, a day where we can look back and go, what an amazing impact he's had. And as a result, the community will reap the benefits.
No, definitely. Pretty well said there too, Jason. That's why you did the podcast by yourself. You're much better talking than I am. So, but also, other news today is that it is looking likely that George Wardlaw will get a 2-year extension, according to Ralphie. That's going to be wrapped up pretty soon. Happy to get that one out of the way and, start to look at a couple other players to re-sign them.
Definitely, and I think it's always, whatever length deal we get told about, you can talk yourself into being the right length of deal. But for a player like him, I think it's important that we sign him. And I'm kind of happy not a long-term deal just because he's been such an injury-prone player. I'd hate to commit to a super, super long-term deal and then, him hopefully it doesn't happen, but he breaks down. If he's fit, he's a fantastic player. You'd want him long-term, but that's the one question mark on him. So I'm sure we'll be selling it, but, we've been a bit conservative. And, that allows him to sell it from the perspective of like he's going to hope to get some more money later on. But I think it works to both players. Both groups because he's such a ripper player. We saw his importance on the weekend, and I think it's good to get him locked away for a couple more years.
Well, just looking at his last quarter on Saturday, 13 disposals, 5 scoring involvements, two clearances. He's pretty much a spiritual leader, I feel, of the club too, Jason. Like he seems to lift blokes around him. And it reminds me, this is probably a bit before your time, but in the early 2000s, late 90s of Anthony Stevens, really the heart and soul of the football club and the true shin boner, very much a blue collar. Has his shirt out, socks down, but yeah.
He looks old-fashioned too, doesn't he? Like the haircut looks like he's from a different era. He's actually, his haircut's about as bad as mine. Like, He does look a bit like he's from that era, but you're right. He's not the most consistent accumulator of the football. Like he goes missing for patches, but when he's on, he's virtually unstoppable, and he's offensive, defensive. Like he does it all. He sort of he's obviously a very different player, but he sort of reminds me of Glenn Archer in that way that he just attacks the football with no regard, or the player, whatever it needs to be, with no regard for his own personal safety. It's just like, I have to get that thing or I'm going to die. He bleeds for the club. So it's a really important signing. And I think, like you said, we saw the impact that he can have when he gets it together, because he was imperative in that last half or quarter of the game.
No, definitely was. It's good to see. It's been a few weeks, and touch wood, Jason, he hasn't had any soft tissue injuries and no head knocks. And you mentioned, well, we probably haven't gone the long-term deal because, of these things. But I feel like he's worked on things like that. I think his running techniques looks a bit better. He's more upright rather than hunched over. And even when he goes in for the ball, he turns his body, protects his head a lot more now. So it's good to see that the coaching group are working with him to work on those things, because it wasn't looking good about 6 to 12 months ago, was it?
No, and I think, we drafted him with concerns over his hamstring, and that was why he was slow to make a debut, and we sort of tried to ease him in. And so I think with that context, and then obviously, like you said, he's had the concussion issues, which, there's plenty of players or examples now of players that have been medically retired. So it's something that I think has to be in the back of our minds, that he's got these two different facets that, are a risk, but at the same time, it's definitely worth the risk. Like a player of his quality, like you said, I think there's things that you can change, both about the way that he attacks the footy, the way that he runs, that we can, hope to limit the chances of him getting those serious injuries over the term of his career. And hopefully we can reap the benefits of investing all of this time, not a massive amount of time, but certainly a few at this point that we've invested into him. Hopefully we can get some really good returns, because he's a super player when he's on.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move forward to we'll move back to the game that happened on Saturday. We might as well get into that, Jason. Now, take me back to half time. We're 37 points down. Things aren't looking great. What are you thinking in that moment?
Oh, I can tell you exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking, Raf's just got up from a nap. That's my son for those listeners that don't know, and maybe we won't watch the second half. Is what I was thinking. Fortunately, I decided we should, so we kept it on. But I guess I was thinking, the week before against Adelaide, we don't need to go into that, but it wasn't good. That was a second quarter drop off, but I was sitting there thinking, are we going to have that kind of drop off where we just drop our heads and the better team powers through? And how many times over the past 5 or 6 years have we seen that kind of North Melbourne stay vaguely in the game and then it sort of falls apart and gets away from us in the second half? So to be honest, that's what I was thinking. I didn't see that kind of comeback at half time at all. But I was very pleased I left it on. And it was really pleasing, I think, just to see that what the coaching group is able to do can make an impact. It's not this this idea that it has to be all on the players, because sure, they executed on things, but you could tell that we came out from half-time with completely different strategy and really through Gold Coast. They really didn't know how to respond. So what were you thinking at half-time? Similar thoughts?
Well, I caught up with Claire Cozzy at half-time. I've never seen her so flat in my life, just to catch up for a drink. But, yeah, I didn't think we were playing as bad as the scoreline suggested. I know that's a stupid thing to say, and it's easy to say after the result, but I didn't think we were playing as bad as we were. As I thought there was and you maybe agree with this. There's a few goals that went against us, and a couple really bad turnovers as well. Blew the margin out. But I thought, we're just got to change things up, and there were some positional changes at half time. Cooper Trembath spent more time at the CBAs because Sherry was struggling with the hit-outs. I think at one stage, I looked at the scoreboard halfway through the third quarter. I think it was hit-outs were 43-26, and Gold Coast had 12 hit-outs to advantage against 5. So that was something they did. Zurhaar going back forward, McKercher going half back to give the team a bit more speed behind the ball as far as positional changes go. I mean, every move they made after half-time seemed to work pretty well, didn't it?
It did, and I think you pair that with the fact that it was just so clear that the instructions was if we get the footy, play on at all costs, and it was, it just the speed that we were able to go with, it just blew the Suns away. They weren't anticipating that speed, so it was the fact that we just absolutely. We could put it all together, and sure, there was still, I remember one in the third quarter, I think, where Luke Parker went for a risky kick in board and it didn't come off, and it looks bad. But, you balance that up against all of the successes that we had, like even that last passage, like Wardlaw's kick from half back through the middle of the ground. It wasn't a straightforward kick to get that ball into the middle to then get it forward for Zurhaar's goal. So the positional changes, obviously, Clarko spun the magnets around. That was fantastic. And then the fact the players were able to commit to it and execute that well enough was sensational. I think you're right. Like we always get killed by silly turnovers, right? Like it's kind of it's our MO. And there was a few goals that you just go like we had all the play, we were looking good, and we've done some stupid kick and it's mucked it up for us. So I think you're right. The scoreboard probably did flatter Gold Coast a little bit, but they were definitely the better side at half time. So to turn the tide like we did was just so refreshing, wasn't it? Like it's so un-North Melbourne from the last 10 years.
No, 100%. Now, I'm going to give you a question here. I'm not too sure if you know the answer, but last quarter we kicked 7 goals. How many of those goals do you think came from the defensive 50?
You're right. I don't know the answer. I know the last one, defensive 50. Look, if I had to guess, I'm assuming you know the answer.
Yeah, I do.
if
I want to ask a question.
I think it'd be most, because I feel like we weren't winning the centre clearances often, but we were launching. I'll say 5 out of 7.
Well, 7 out of 7. All goals came from the
there you
defensive
go.
half. And that's what happens when you put a bit of speed behind the ball. You had Hardiman and McKercher.
Yes.
I really like the balance back there. So, yeah, that makes a big difference. I know McKercher has his faults as a defensive, as particularly one-on-one, but, geez, you can't question his kicking and skill. And that's probably, with Zerha, you got Zerha, McDonald, Daniel, Griffin Logue, Comben. They're all one-pace players. They're not going to give you... There's no overlap there. Blamires came in. He didn't really do much, unfortunately, doing that role. So just giving Hardiman and McKercher back there, it was able to free up Caleb Daniel, I felt, as well. Gave him more space to hit his targets. Freed up Luke McDonald, who could play more of a lockdown role. So it was a big win-win, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's what last year... Finn O'Sullivan did a really good job of that in the back half last year. I much prefer him in the midfield, to be clear. Like, I think that's his spot, but I think he allowed McKercher last year to do a lot of that. You can only really carry one McKercher in that back line that's not capable of defending. So I think, if we've got him there, which I like most of the time, we've just got to make sure that we've got really sound defensive players around him. And then a player like Hardiman is that perfect balance because he can defend, but he's also got that really good run and penetration. So so long as you've got the right mix around McKercher, it works really well.
Well, it's a bit like Dane Zorko with Brisbane last year. Probably not so much this year, particularly on the weekend. But, he's not a defensive player. He doesn't have a defensive player in his bone. But he's more damaging offensively. And I suppose it helps if you've got Harris Andrews back there. So,
doesn't hurt.
Now, I'm getting a couple of questions coming into the chat. So, Clarko's Medicinal Cannabis is asking about the 3 ruck situation. Is this a worry for Big X? And even Patrick Allwood has come in as well. I'm actually wondering if X is injured. Anyone know? Can't leave the ground even for him. So I guess people are worried that... I don't think there's anything to worry about outside the CBAs. And you can always put Trembath or Dawson in there just for one CBA whenever a team kicks a goal. Because I think everything else has been pretty good from Big X.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where he's a victim of the ruck rule changes, and he's not the only one in the AFL that's the case for. So I really like the strategy. At the start of the year, I thought it'll be fine. What's it going to matter? But it's clear that he does struggle in a jumping situation, which is fine. I think the strategy is get Trembath really good in there, and I think it's a perfect straight swap where you start X at full forward or centre half forward, Trembath does the ruck, and they swap over. Like, that works really well. The Will Dawson one's an interesting one because I'd prefer us to be developing him either as a key defender, which is where most of his time's been developing, I think, or a key forward. But if we're going to experiment with him in the ruck to get him some game time, I guess I'm okay with it. But to me, that's not his best position. Anyway, like, it is what it is. I don't mind. I'm not concerned with Tristan Xerri so long as he's out of the CBAs. And maybe that just means we have to spend more time getting the mids to know how to crumb to Cooper in the ruck, because he's going to be in there for the CBAs more often. But I don't think it's a concern, particularly when you look at the result in the second half. Like, that worked pretty well for us, didn't it?
No, and I don't mind having Cooper Trembath in the ruck for spells as well. It gets him more involved in the game. He did against Adelaide in the third quarter. Obviously, the game was done and dusted, but it got him into a little bit of form as well. So I don't mind him running around the ground.
Yeah, it does. It's a good way to get him into the game when he's struggling, isn't it? Because he's had a bit of a quieter patch. And then we saw he was able to kick a couple of goals on the weekend, I think, as a result of just getting a bit of touch on the footy. So, he doesn't have that football knowledge like Jack Darling does, where he's able to just find the ball when he's out of form. And he's young. You wouldn't expect him to. So I think you're absolutely right. It's a good way to get him in. I see that second question. Do we think X is injured? I don't think so. Do you think so, Dan?
No, I don't think so at all. I
just think he can't jump.
Yeah, I don't think it's his strength. And you've seen the last couple of years, he'd run past that centre line and get into a wrestle with the opposition ruckman. And I think there's certain players that are going to out-jump him, and there's going to be some he'll be okay to go against. They'll be similar. So we've seen it with Melbourne. They've put Max Gawn in some games outside the CBAs and put Max Heath in there because he's got a bigger leap. So, yeah, I don't think there's too much to worry about. So what do you think, look, just on Trembath, what do you think he needs to work on now? We've seen his first 7 games come into the competition and just kick 3 goals a game and was a revelation. But what do you think he needs to work on to find a little bit more consistency?
I think the easy answer is he has to follow Jack Darling around and watch Jack Darling tape. That's the easy answer. But in terms of a practical sense, it's about knowing when he has to push further up to just get some touch and take a mark on the wing, which Jack Darling is so good at, just getting that release, that second kick from defence, and being an option there, and being okay that you're probably going to make that run 10 times and it's going to go to you twice and you're going to mark it once. That's the work rate that you've got to have, and the commitment to the team that you've got to have if you're playing that position. And I think the reality is he's going to have to get used to the fact that that's now that teams have figured him out a little bit, he's going to have to adjust his game. I think early on he was really good at taking those marks where he runs across the pack and no one's really getting a body on him. And now teams know that's what he does. So I do think it's just going to be adjusting the way that he approaches packs and the way that he runs the footy, because teams know that he can run and jump at it, so they're going to try and get a body on him and stop him from doing that. So it's those little things that are just going to come with practice. I think it's like I said, watch Jack Darling. He's just so good at getting himself in front and holding position in the front and leading all the way up to half back if he has to take that mark.
Yeah, just help out the defence for a get-out kick as well. Look, he's played over 300 games, been an All-Australian, played in premierships, Jack Darling, so I think he knows the game pretty well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with learning from him. I think Jack Darling will be like, I'm not so sure if he'll ever be a senior coach, but he definitely will be a line coach down the track. But he's still playing some pretty good football for his age. He's probably been our best key forward this year, most consistent, hasn't he?
Yeah, definitely most consistent. There hasn't been a game where he's been the dominant player, but he's probably always been our second or third best performing forward. That being said, he got dropped.
He got dropped after the West Coast game, yeah.
Yeah, and then he came straight back in because Sherry got suspended and we needed another tall in. So I guess he didn't start. Since then, I'd say you're absolutely right. He's been our most consistent forward, and he just structurally he's so reliable. You know, you're going to get. I think it's unlikely he's ever going to kick like a bag of 5 or 6 for us, but that's not what he needs to do. He's a really important structure. I think he's going to be great for Trembath and any other developing key forwards that we want to develop in that area. And like we said, we're going to get from him every week.
No, definitely. A couple of people came in the chat. Clarko's medicinal came in. Cannabis said, "Will Dino make a formal apology to Special K?" Not yet. And Rue Tragic 11. Good to hear you again, Jason. Always enjoyed your assessment of our games. Lovely reflection of Neil Danaher. So there you go, mate. You're getting a few fans today coming in, Jason. So yeah, nice little ego boost for you anyway.
It is, I'm walking taller.
I can see. Now, Cam Zurhaar, there's been a lot of mixed reaction about his move to the back line. I think there's been a body of work there, but he made a big difference in the second half. Now, 10 disposals, 7 score involvements, 2 goal assists and a clutch goal at the end as well. Are you happy to have him back forward, or did you like him in the back line, Jason?
Can I have option C? I like him in both. I think in terms of, I think it's actually one of those ones where it's a great option to have where we can swap him either within games or game to game, particularly if we spend enough time with him in defence developing, his knowledge around how to play in that position. I think in this game it worked perfectly because he wasn't having much of an impact in defence, and so we were able to flip him into attack, and he knows how to play that role, and he played it really well. Obviously, it didn't hit the scoreboard didn't hit a big sixer until that last really important goal, but he had plenty of impactful, important moments leading up to that in that second half. And I think in reality, after that breakout game that he played in defence where it was a complete surprise, he hasn't shot the lights out in defence, but I do think that he brings something different to the dynamic, and he has that, I guess, that ability to just do something unpredictable, but not with the football, but in terms of off the ball. I think that's what makes it difficult to for opposition players to predict what he's going to do. I think it was the last game against Adelaide, maybe, or the one before. Anyway, I remember him coming off half back and kicking a nice goal from 50, and that's that sort of, he has that forward craft, but he doesn't necessarily have that predictability that other players would have. So I think it's a great option to have him as a swingman because he wasn't having the impact forward consistently this year, and we see how it goes. I don't think he's going to be a full-time halfback, but I think it's a great experiment.
I know. Oh, sorry. I know. Coming into the season, there was a lot of talk that he was going to spend like the last bits of the quarter, last 4 or 5 minutes, just dropping back as a loose in the back line, because we've been great at conceding red time goals over the last few years, and I think that was going to be the plan going into the year, but. Yeah, it never really happened, and then all of a sudden in the Richmond game, they thought, oh, well, let's just put him in the back line and trial him there, and he was great in that first game against Richmond. It's been a bit hit and miss, but I don't mind going back to that original theory of just like every 2 or 3 minutes, all right, we'll drop him as a loose just to steady the flow, or even if it's a close game towards the end and we're trying to save the game, all right, we'll put him as a loose, because I think he's very good at going third man up in a contest.
He can be, and I think it's a far better fit than trying to make him that sort of part-time mid that we experimented with, and we've sort of wanted him to become a Jordan De Goey type or a Dustin Martin type, and he's never had the running capacity to do it. So I think this is a much better fit for him, and I think you're right. He absolutely can be that player. Like Oscar Allen does that a fair bit, or Charlie Curnow would do that from time to time at Carlton, just drop back in the last couple of minutes. And I'm not saying that Zurhaar is playing exactly as well as they did their prime, but I think he can have a similar impact where the opposition, you might catch the opposition napping for a minute or two because they're not expecting it, and it gives you that capacity to get an easy third man across the contest mark.
No, definitely. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes over the next few weeks. I mean, it's a hard position playing as a forward. You've got to rely a lot on players up the ground and delivering it to you. But look, he had a good year last year, kicked 40 goals, and it started a bit indifferent this year. But hopefully, the weekend was a sign that we might get the best out of Cameron Zurhaar for the rest of the year. Clarko's medicinal cannabis has given me 48 hours to apologise and turn around on Jacob Costanti. Look, I'll give you this, that I'm starting to warm to him. I thought and I agree. I thought he was really good on the weekend. Are you a Jacob Costanti fan, Jason, while I've got you here?
It's a good question. If you asked me, a couple of days ago, I would have said not really. He did have a really good game against the Suns, both in that he kicked a couple of goals and he had a really important tackle in the last quarter. Like when he's on and his defensive pressure is there, he's a good player. But I just don't think we've done this for how many years with defensively minded forwards for North Melbourne. Yeah. Like, they can play a role for the team, but I think if the team is losing, it's pretty hard to respect that role. It'd be different if we were winning games and he was playing that same kind of role, but I think you've got to at least be threatened to hit the scoreboard, and he did that this week, and I think it makes it a lot easier to respect his game. I probably would prefer to see Dovison in the team long term, but I also understand that he wasn't having much of an impact in his last few games, and it's not a problem to keep spinning the magnets around. So I'm happy to keep moving things around and playing the informed players, but I wouldn't say I'm in love with JK. No.
That's a strong statement. Look, I think he had his best game in his career on the weekend. The reason I say that is similar to you. He was prepared to be proactive. I think he was too defensive as previously when he's been in a team and creating nothing offensively. Like that Nick Blakey game where he played a few weeks ago, he wasn't getting front and square. He was just trying to quell Nick Blakey the whole game. I think that's too much of a tough role to play. Nick Blakey's taking the kick-ins. He's going to get possession. So, and he kicked a nice crumb and goal in the first quarter on his left foot, being front and square. I think we're last in the competition for ground ball gets in our forward half. By a fair way, they've said. And we need more of that, not all the time, but, every now and then would be nice. And he kicked another good goal from about 45 metres as well. Some strong tackles, like he said. Plays like a poor man's Tom Papley, which I don't mind. But I'm starting to come around. That's all I can say. But yeah, it's a couple more weeks. You never know. I could be a huge JK fan, and who knows, Jason, I may fall in love with him. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. What about his tag team partner, Charlie Spargo? Seems to be good for a goal a game, but seems to get his critics. I haven't been overly critical, except for his contract length, which isn't his fault. But I can see why he plays, because he plays a role and works hard for the team. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I think I need to see a bit more of him just to fully understand what we're trying to achieve from his role. Because we know, one thing North Melbourne has had in spades over the last couple of years is half forwards. And so, it's
well, we
not
might
exactly
be taking another one tomorrow, I heard. So.
I know, it's not exactly a list hole for us. But if he's able to play a pressure role and a linking role, and he does have that ability to crumb a little bit, or at least read a pack, whether or not I don't think he's going to be hitting the front of the pack every time, but he's got that capacity. I like players that have a lot of different elements that they can bring to their game. It's just so interesting because you think back to last year, obviously Spargo was on the list and Dersma couldn't get a game. Davison was on the list. Like we've got a lot of half forwards, medium forwards, small forwards that we've found roles for or are trying to find roles for. It's tricky. Like I'd love Spargo to just be like one tier higher as a player based on his age profile. But if he can help some of those other guys bridge that gap and be a more seasoned body, even though he's not a bigger body, I'm not too unhappy with that. But you wouldn't want him to be taking games away from Davison.
No, of course not. But yeah, look, generally speaking, if someone gets a long-term contract like he does, he will get games. Yes. Whether it's the list manager, the coaches, or whoever it is, probably both of them, to be honest with you, they will get him in the team somehow. Now, he was a good player a couple of years ago, but he's had a lot of injuries since then at Melbourne. He was, quite a handy contributor for the Demons Premiership team. That's going back 5 years now. That's going back a long time, but a lot of things have changed since then. So, like you said, I think we'd like to see a little bit more from him. But then again,
I think going back to what you said there, he was a good role player, and you need good role players. So it's not a criticism of him, but kind of similar to Constanti. If you it's easy to be a good role player in a good team. It's really hard to be a good role player in a bad team. And so I think as we get better, it'll be far easier to see if he's actually, having the impact that we want him to, because the results will speak for themselves.
No, definitely. Patrick Orwell's come in and said flexibility in our list is exploding. Zerha, Kurt, Trembath, Jai, Chom, and probably others can all be flipped around to give us different looks and a bit more flexibility. And he said JK is only 21 too, so lots of upside there, Jason. Do you agree with that? The upside is
I
huge.
definitely agree with I agree with flexibility. I don't know if JK's upside is huge. There is upside there, but how big is it? I don't know. Like he's not super athletic. He's not small. He's not tall. So the upside is what he can develop within his own skill set as opposed to physical. But you're right. He's young. He does have time on his side.
Yeah, there you go, Patrick. That's all we can say about that. So we're not going to say he's the next Tom Papley or the greatest small forward of all time. He's still got a bit of work to do, and we'd like to see it a bit more.
The next Kane Turner. How about that?
Yeah, look, he's that's not a high bar, so yeah,
it's not.
He should be able to try that. But I did notice his role was a little bit different. While we're talking about him and making this whole show about Constanti, he was playing down. He was playing down back a little bit. Whether he's playing on a wing, because there was a stoppage where Griffin Logue said, "You go to Ben King, I'll go as a loose." That happened a couple of times in our back half. So.
Yeah, I think he was coming up to the wing. And playing that sort of defensive winger role, which again speaks to that flexibility. Like I think we want to have players that you can confidently move them around and at least know what you're going to get from them. So upside, yep, for sure.
Yeah, that's all we can say is that there's upside there. Don't know how much, but there's upside. Now, we have to talk about the last seconds of the game. Now, you talked about the Wardlaw kick to the middle. Parker, quick rush kick down to Zerha. First of all, was it a free kick? And second of all, did you see what happened after that when Nick Larkey fresh aired it and Paul Curtis didn't score or anything like that right at the end? Lucky they didn't call advantage. They took the ball back. I'm not too sure if you've seen that, Jason.
I have seen that. So definitely for me, it was a free kick. That being said, you've seen
the last
that kind
second,
of
I think
thing.
the defender panicked. Yeah.
Yeah, but you've seen that kind of thing not paid when it's the last seconds of the game. The umpires just blow the whistle and only pay things that are dead set there. And so I think I don't want to say we're lucky that it was paid, but I think from that perspective, you've seen it not paid. But it was definitely a free kick. After that, what an absolute brain fart! Like I cannot, but all they had to do was get it through. Like for Larky to fresh air it, and then for it to come off the side of Paul Curtis's boot that badly that didn't even go through. It's unfathomable. Like to be honest, I don't know why. It's in those moments. It's really hard to know why the umpire decides to bring it back as opposed to paying advantage. But it would have been the most North Melbourne thing for advantage to have been paid, and it doesn't even go through for a score. We were very fortunate with that, I think.
Yeah, that was probably more lucky than the free kick.
I agree. I totally agree.
That was, like you sort of said, that's just the North Melbourne thing. That would have just summed up a North Melbourne experience perfectly, to be honest with you. I couldn't believe he fresh aired it. I don't know how he missed it on his. It was a metre out, and then I thought, because I was watching it and I started jumping up and down, they're going to score here and we're going to win.
Yeah.
And then I just looked at it and I put my hands on my head, and the umpire said, no, we'll bring it back to Zerha. I don't know if he called time off. That's the only thing I can think of. Yeah, because maybe he did that. And that
or I guess you could make an argument that the umpire's thinking it's extremely loud. The players aren't going to know that a free kick was paid. Maybe you could make an argument like that. So he's saying that he couldn't actually pay advantage because the players didn't know. Like, I don't know, but one way or another, it worked out for us. But you're right. The fact that Larky, we could have just tapped it through. Like a point would have been totally fine. He didn't need to kick it. But I get in those moments that it's a bit of a rush of blood to the brain. You're not necessarily thinking straight in those moments. Yeah.
Yeah, probably a little bit of panic came in. Well, Lucky sort of almost butchered that one where he took a mark and handballed to Spargo.
Oh, yeah, that was awful. And I think had that been a hand pass to a younger player, like it's possible that doesn't end up a goal. Like it was lucky that Spargo, took his time, even though Lucky put him under pressure and was able to put it through.
Well, plenty of upside with Charlie Spargo as well.
Not quite as young, but
he's only 25. He's getting his body right. So yeah, but moving forward, are you happy to be 5 and 6 at the halfway point of the year with a percentage in the 90s? I mean, that's a big improvement from the last few years, isn't it?
I'm stoked, to be honest. I know there's a correct narrative that prior to this game we hadn't beat anyone of note, and that is true. We've now beaten Gold Coast, so I think it's fair to say that's a win against a good team. But yeah, to be 5 and 6, I think going into the season I would have been extremely happy with that result based on our previous years where we've been struggling to get 5 wins for the year. I think it's just easy to be a bit soured by the loss to West Coast and that belting to Adelaide. If you turn that win from the West Coast game, if you turn that West Coast game into a win and you lose to Adelaide by 20 points, I think everyone would be ecstatic. So, if we think about it from a starting point of 0, I'm really happy with that result, and I think it's a fair reflection of the development that the trajectory we're on. We're not yet a good team, but we're able to beat most of the bad teams now, and that's going to put us somewhere in the middle of the table, which is where we want to be rather than at the bottom.
No, and that's all you can do. And I think there's upside where the draw isn't too bad after the mid-season. I mean, we've got Fremantle straight after. That's going to be a challenge. But then you got what you're talking about, West Coast. You still got to play Richmond again, Essendon. And you got 50-50 games secured of Bulldogs. I mean, finals isn't out of the question, is it?
No, we could definitely make the play-in. Like, you're right. We've got Freo, and then it's West Coast, Richmond, Essendon, Port Adelaide. So we won all of those games, but except for West Coast in the first half of the year, and then sure it gets a little bit trickier again. But then, that they're the ones where we just have to try and pinch one or two. Like it's not going to be a season where we get into the play-in games and think, gee, we're a chance here to win the premiership, but it's not really about that. It's like let's make it to wild card and let's feel like we've made some improvement, and then let's push again to do better the next year. Like we I would hope that no one's unrealistically thinking about we need to make top six. It's just not where we're at with our development.
No, but look, it doesn't look like we're far off. Like next year could definitely be a year where we take a big leap forward, and I guess it's not bad timing. If we're going to start an era with Tassie coming in so soon, I guess now's the best time to do it because the draft is going to be very heavily compromised over the next couple of years, Jason.
Yes, it is a time. If there was a time to be off the bottom of the ladder, it's now. Similar to when the Suns and the Giants were coming in, whenever that was, like 10, 15 years ago. Like that was another bad time to be at the bottom. So I think that and there's, I guess, two sides to that coin. Yes, you don't want to be down the bottom and have those top premium picks compromised, and you also don't want to be down the bottom and have players sort of just thinking about, well, do I just take some money and go to Tassie because this North Melbourne team's rubbish? Like there's two really good incentives to be trying to push to be at least a good team over the next few years.
No, it definitely is. If you had to grade our season so far, what would you give it? Being a school teacher yourself?
Gee, I mean, I guess relative to expectations, I think for me it's probably a B or a B plus.
Yeah.
If you're comparing to every other team, like it's probably more like a C, but it's not. We're thinking about North Melbourne's expectations and how we're going. Like we've improved, So a B or a B plus. There's been a lot of positives, a couple of big errors, but broadly speaking, I think it's a positive grade. I'll be sitting down with North Melbourne's parents and saying there's a lot of positives. We've just got a little bit of things to work on, and we're going to be in for a good second half of the year. So I'd have plenty of good things to say at parent interviews.
Yeah. No, don't talk about absenteeism and stuff like that. Well, maybe we missed the second quarter last week, but outside of that, a couple bad losses. Probably the Adelaide game last week, but that was one quarter. This round 2 game against West Coast, but that was their first home game, and they generally do pretty well in their first home game. So, outside of that, it's been pretty solid, and they've won the games they've been expected to win, and been close in a couple of other games. City Swans, that could have gone either way, and Gold Coast obviously overran them in the end. So, pretty good. If we went down a path of going to another 10-goal loss or something against Gold Coast, then the grade's probably a bit different. But, I think B's a fair summary there, Jason. Mid-season draft is coming up tomorrow. Now, I think we've got pick 6. Linked to some key defenders, Xavier Beaumont, or I don't even know how to say his name, but I've seen him. He's a very classy player from our 2s. And there's another forward, another mid-sized forward that we're interested in from Perth as well. I'm trying to remember his name. I think it's Griffin or something like that. You put much into the mid-season draft, but I guess after we found Trembard last year, there might you never know, you might find a diamond in the rough.
You never know, but the answer to the easy answer is no, I don't. Just because I think it's you're trying to find a diamond in the rough as opposed to, getting that elite talent, and so. Cooper Trembath definitely appears to be a diamond in the rough, but we know prior to that our mid-season drafting has lacked. So I'm going in with the expectations that we're not going to pick up a game-changing player for us. And God, like if another, I can't imagine why we would be selecting a mid-sized forward. Like it just doesn't seem like something that we need for our list. But I mean a larger key defender is someone that we could potentially use. If it was a crafty small forward, like I'd be a little bit more interested. But look, whoever we take, we hope that they've got some potential, and if it works out, it works out. I don't think we're going to win a premiership based on who we draft this mid-season.
No, definitely not. I wouldn't mind that James Tarrant if I had to take one. Because I've seen a body of work from him. He works within our system. I don't mind taking players that have worked in our system, whether it's him or Xavier B, who's not shows a little bit. He's got good skills. Plays as a bit of a high half forward. He might be an upside on Charlie Spargo. I don't think he's an upside on Jacob Costanti, who's the greatest ever small forward, Jason. So, I don't mind him. I don't mind taking that, just going through our own backyard and picking players like that, because you might be able to attract more players from local footy and sort of think, oh, well, I might go to North and, who knows, I might get picked up.
And naturally, you're just going to have more information about them from whether or not they have that potential. Because you look at Trembath and, I'm not saying that we knew he was going to be this good, because I think that's unrealistic. But I think at least they would have looked at him and gone, okay, athletically, he's got something. It's whether or not we can capture that and turn that into, an AFL standard player. And early signs are positive, and I guess that's what you get when you're looking at players in your own backyard. You've probably got a far better lens on what their potential is and what their attributes are, as opposed to, watching someone run around a couple of times in the VFL or looking at talent league games from the previous year. So you're right, it's a good strategy. If it works, it has that potential to make you a really enticing prospect for your VFL side or for your development squad. So we'll see. We'll see who we come away with.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the luxury of academies like the Brisbane team, so yeah, it makes it a bit tricky. So I wouldn't mind just trying a diamond in the rough, whether it's Baymet or James Tarrant. I'll definitely look at that closely, but not up to me. It's up to Brady Rawlings and Will Thursfield, Liam Shields and all that. So, yeah, we'll see what happens in 24 hours. Now, the reserves had a comeback win to take the Suns down by 13 points. I'll go through a few players. Zach Fisher playing on the wing, 22 disposals and 3 goals. Excellent couple of goals in the last quarter. Him and Robert Hanson Jr. and Fisher formed a dynamic duo similar to Spargo and Costanti. Good ball use behind the ball from Hanson, 32 disposals. Blamires, good response with 29 disposals. Harvey, 21. Taylor Goad, 2 goals. And good to see Goda back as well with 17 touches. Anyone standing out for you there? I wouldn't mind getting your thoughts on Cooper Harvey. I think he's been pretty good. Probably a bit stiff not to get a game in the ones, playing the back half. But yeah, where do you think he's at?
I definitely think we'll see Cooper this year, because ultimately, I think most of us thought he was going to be delisted at the end of last year, and so he's on another 1-year deal. I think we'll see him just from the perspective of, are we going to invest in him long term, or do we cut him loose? I've got no doubt that, I think every North Melbourne fan wants him to succeed, right? Like the family name. It's a famous family name, so I think we want him to succeed. I think he's done enough to warrant at least him to go. It wasn't his absolute best game on the weekend, but it was another good one. So I'd love to see him get a go, and I think we will see him before the end of the year. Goda, I think when he's ready, he'd have a better read on how his body's going, because we certainly don't want to bring him back in and have him breaking down again. But I think it's important that we see him before the year is out. And then it's beyond that. It's players like Whitlock or Goad, where it's more around. I know they're not ready for a consistent game, but maybe we hope that they're ready for if there's an injury or an availability opportunity for them. That's the sort of time that we might try to slot them in, because it's important that everyone gets a touch, so to speak. You don't want them absolutely wasting away in the VFL or knocking down a door and not being able to find their way in either. It's a delicate balance.
Have you been impressed with Tom Blamires as well since he's been in the AFL system? Been in and out of the team.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great pre-season selection. I think we saw him in one of those practice games. He had a really good game. We thought, all right, we've really found one. And he's been okay. I don't think he's knocked our socks off, but he looks like he's got the skill set to play AFL level. Sometimes he looks a little rushed. I don't think he's got the coolest head on his shoulders, but he's got a good penetrating kick. I guess similar to, I'm not comparing him to Colin McKercher, but in a similar way to him, I think that he would be a far more tantalising prospect if he had a bit more defensive nous about him. He get beaten one-on-one probably a little bit too much for my liking, but he's definitely a great depth player, and there's potential that he could develop into something more. It'll be interesting to see now that he's actually in an AFL system if he can develop his skill and his body to be a bit more of an AFL ready player. But I've been impressed with the fact that we've found him, a couple of weeks before the season. He's a great pickup for depth for sure.
Oh, no, definitely. I mean, I think it was 2 weeks before the season started. No one had really heard of him. And he's mature age. He's 22, so it's sort of tough. You've got to hit the ground running. But look, he's added a bit more depth, like he said. So that's all we can ask for. And he's had his opportunities. And unfortunately, there's been, you've got Riley Hardiman who's come in and done a real good job. But if injuries come up or poor form happens, then you can certainly put his case forward. Zach Fisher, I've maintained he's the best small forward at the club, Jason. But he's another player that probably just can't get his body right consistently, can he? Because, I don't know, I still see something in him. Are you a Zach Fisher believer?
Not really, but I think he's kind of similar to Charlie Spargo in that we've brought him across on a longer term deal on some money. So I think he'll get a chance when he's right, at some stage. I don't think we're going to let him languish in the VFL forever if he's fit. What his best position is, I don't know. Like, obviously, he's played mostly off half-back for us. But we know from his time at Carlton he can play small forward, and he at least knows where the goals are, and he's done a bit of that at VFL level. So, look, I think he'll get his chances, but I just don't know that. I think he's one of those ones that we brought him across and we hoped that we could turn him into something a bit more than he was at Carlton with some more opportunity, and it hasn't necessarily panned out. I mean, I think Caleb Daniels kind of shone a light on what Zach Fisher wasn't quite able to bring for us, and we're hoping that we've solved our small forward problem with Doverston in the coming years, but you never know. Like, he might not turn out. So it's good to have options, but I'm probably not a big Zach Fisher fan. No.
Okay, well, that's hit me where it hurts most, Jason.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Look, I mean, like I sort of said at the start, we've got the least ground ball gets in the competition inside our forward 50, and I think there's a body of work there. Unfortunately, the bar wasn't very high from what we had, but Costanti showed a bit on the weekend, and Charlie Spargo can certainly play a role. So,
to your point, like, I know you said, like, statistically we're the worst ground ball team in our forward line, and I believe you. The eye test says the same though. Like, when you watch literally any other team, like, it's glaring how much better other teams are at having a long kick inside their 50 and having players hit the right spot. We seem to, for whatever reason, kick a long kick to 30 metres out from goal, and every single player is in the contest, and we don't have anyone hitting front and centre. So anyone, if that's something that Zach Fisher can consistently do, let's see it, because we need more players that can do that. We have too many players that want to mark the ball inside 50 and not enough that want to crumb it. So bring it on.
Yeah, well, Costanti did it in the first quarter on the weekend, and I'll give him. Geez, we've rambled on about him, like he's God's gift to football, but he did kick a nice front and centre's goal, which we just don't see at all. Going back to your point, so fair enough. Now, just one last one before I let you go. Tom Powell has been out of the team. Now I know he's injured. Again, come down with a groin injury. I think they're really struggling to find a spot for him on the team. They've tried him in the forward 50. Hasn't really worked. They took him out of the midfield quite early this year after round 2. Has only had a handful of CVAs since. We have trialled him in the past on half-back flank. I'm not too sure where his position is, Jason, and his football. I know he's only 23 or 24. It's almost at the crossroads right now.
Yeah, I think his best football is in the midfield, but we just don't have a role for him in the midfield. So it's a challenging one. I think when we're getting Sheasel and Fiona Sullivan in there, mostly full time, and then obviously we've got someone like LDU and Wardlaw who are always going to be in there when they're available. It's going to be pretty tough to find time for Tom Powell in the middle. He hasn't really been an impactful forward. Like, he hasn't kicked a bag of goals or anything like that, or been a valuable link up as a half forward. So I think if we're fit, he's not in our best team, which is unfortunate for him. But it's one of those catch-22s. Like, it's a fantastic thing for us that a player of his talent doesn't have a spot, because it speaks to the fact that holistically we're getting better as a team. But it's just unfortunate. He's going to have to wait in the wings and rely on some injuries or something like that to get a spot. And maybe he's the sort of player that you could throw up in a trade later in the year and try and get something back positionally that you need, or get back into the draft. Like, I know that's thinking a little bit ahead, but I know he's from South Australia, so there's that potential that you could try and lure him back home. But the challenge with that is that every week that he doesn't get a spot in the team, his value goes down. So
I don't think his value would be very high. Yeah,
No.
I don't. No, you'd probably only get a third rounder or something for him at best case scenario, which is a bit of a shame because he is a very talented footballer, and he's just got to find that consistency and find a position, because, like you said, there's other players in that midfield that have just gone ahead of him. There's 4 or 5, and even
like Fino Sullivan's the easy one that's just skips past him, right? Like you'd take Fino Sullivan in midfield every time over Tom Powell. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, you got Sheasel, LDU, and even when one of those players have missed, like I think Fino Sullivan missed a couple of weeks, we put Jai Simpkin back in there and left Tom Powell out. So, yeah, he's down the pecking order, to say the least. But just to finish up, who have been some players that have really impressed you so far this year individually?
I mean, Fino Sullivan's an easy one just to say. Like, his ability to just slot into a more or less full-time midfielder has been fantastic to see. Obviously it's an easy one. He's a really high draft pick. You want him to be a really good player, but I think it's pleasing to see his developments continued. Zane Dersma is an interesting one for me, because I think we were all the past couple of years sort of going, have we stuffed up that really high draft pick? Like, we're all really happy to get rid of Ben Mackay and trade him away for that pick, but what have we got back in reality? And I was really concerned at the end of last year that he just wasn't going to be there for us. But he's really turned the corner this year, and he's playing a really hard role. He's that high half forward, sometimes on the wing, but he's managed to kick goals. He had, had that really important kick inside 50 to LDU late in the game against Gold Coast, which was really pleasing to see a player lower his eyes. So his development this year has really impressed me, and been quite comforting, based on how I was feeling about his first couple of years. I'm just scrolling through the rest of the play. Luke McDonald's a fantastic story, I think, because it's not that he's been remarkable. I think he's been a solid contributor down back, but the fact that he's just been able to go back to doing what he does best, which is be a Dow defender. He can launch a rebounding 50 when he needs to, but he's not being asked to do anything that he can't do at the moment. And I think his consistency has been really impressive. And then, I can't go past to finish on Luke Parker's transformation to a halfback. Like I said, he's made some mistakes. He hasn't nailed everything, but I think his composure, he just never gets beaten one-on-one, and he bites off those really tricky kicks and makes a lot of them. He's been a game changer for us. I would have never picked him as a defender that could play as well as he has. I didn't think he could be a Luke Hodge type in his career, but he's proven me wrong, and I'm sure plenty of others. He's been immense down there, absolutely fantastic. So super impactful. I think it's really easy to underrate just how good he's been.
No, I definitely agree with you there, particularly the first 4 or 5 weeks when winning games. But like you said, his ability to take the game on. There was a couple of risky kicks in that last quarter. He really took it on, and if it didn't work out, it would have probably gone the other way. But look, he backs himself in. That just probably comes with experience as well. Dersma, he doesn't get many touches still, but every time he does, geez, it's quality. Like you said, that LDU kick. I was on the wing, and I'm in the best position right in front of him. I didn't even see that kick. I thought he should have kicked the Zerha. It was more in the pocket.
And that's what the commentary said too. They were saying Zerha, and he picked the exact right kick.
Yeah, and he pinpointed it perfectly. I think Jack Darling as well. For a 33, 34-year-old, the way he's playing at the moment has been, almost as good as he's ever played, and that's saying something for an ex-Australian. Sheasel LDU as well. They've been outstanding. So just the regulars. But Jason, I really appreciate you coming on, mate. I've taken up a lot of your time, I should say. Now, it's been close to an hour, but I could have talked to you another hour at least. But it's been great to get your insights. And, definitely try and get you on again soon. Talk more North Melbourne. I see it looked like you had a lot of energy tonight and you brought the passion. But it probably felt a lot easier for you to be on the other side of the
Yeah, definitely. I wasn't having to think of what I was going to talk about. I was just able to let it flow, and it's a nice feeling actually. It's good to talk. North Melbourne. It's been a little while. When I'm talking with the students at school, it's not quite the same level of intellectual conversation about it. So it's good to get on, and hopefully, if we're looking for a quick win, you just know that you need to send me a message, and we'll make sure that we can arrange a last-minute win for North Melbourne, because it was you asked me about the game, and I thought, this will be interesting coming on after probably a 6-goal loss. But after that game, I was more than happy to come and talk about North Melbourne.
No, it definitely makes it a lot easier, that's for sure. But Jason, once again, thanks so much for coming on, mate. And I'll definitely try and chat soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Dean. It's been good, and certainly happy to come back in the future, particularly if the listeners can be so kind to me and pump up my tyres. I'd be more than happy to come back on. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, the ratings are through the roof already, Jason. So it's helped me out. So that's always good. But that's going to do it for this week on the #Kangaroos podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back probably later this week to break down more of North Melbourne, probably mid-season draft and so forth. Don't forget, subscribe, leave a rating, comment, and everything else. Tell Jason how well he did tonight, how he carried the ship. It's always a bonus. But until later in the week, bye for now, and go Roos.